Hi, I'm Nikki Halliwell, and this is SEO in 2023.
Nikki, what's your number one SEO tip for 2023?
What I've seen is that there's a really significant opportunity to capitalise on keywords that have a high number of impressions in Google Search Console, but a low number of clicks in comparison to that. And what I've seen is a lot of people actually talking about this on SEO Twitter and WordPress and those similar sort of communities. And it's really interesting that I've seen on the back of that as well that someone's created a tool called Query Hunter, and this helps to do exactly that. And as a result, you can improve your rankings. It works really well, and because it is geared more toward WordPress sites, but there's ways around it that I'll talk about in a second that you can use on non-WordPress sites. But with WordPress sites specifically, it's a plugin that you can download, and it allows you to see your Search Console data within each post as you're editing them. You can see keywords, as I say, that get a lot of impressions but very little clicks, and off the back of that, we can see the posts nice and up front that have the potential to bring in a lot of traffic. We already know that they're being seen in search because of the number of impressions that they have. So what we can deduce from that is they're not quite fulfilling perhaps the query's intent because they do have so few clicks in comparison. So we can look at the opportunities within that content and see whether we need to perhaps write a new post around that keyword or those select keywords, or perhaps cover them more thoroughly in a separate post. What you can do also within this same tool or manually within Search Console yourself is look at the keywords for those posts that are actually ranking in positions like 3 to 11. And that is really useful, and I think it's going to continue to be useful throughout 2023 and beyond because they're already doing well. Posts like that, they're on the first page of SERPs. But what we can then do is look at what keywords or what pages are actually above you in positions 1 and 2 there. And in some cases, it can be as simple as ensuring that you've mentioned the keyword enough times in the content, or we can go a little bit deeper and see keywords that have actually not been mentioned in the content. That's a big opportunity because it essentially means that you're already ranking for those keywords and getting impressions for those keywords without actually mentioning them in your content. So again, that's a really powerful opportunity, and just look for natural ways that we can integrate the keywords into the content to facilitate that boost in rankings. Now, I've been looking at this, as I said, with my own clients with and without this tool. And you can do it, again, as I said, manually, like looking in Search Console at a page level. And yeah, it is more time consuming and it involves a fair amount of searching and sorting the data, but it's certainly useful. One of the things that I would like to do to help with this, I think, is look at ways to set up a Data Studio dashboard that pulls the data in, and that would make it easier to roll out to other websites. But it's, I've been able to do it on Magento websites that have blog content using this more manual method. So it's certainly not something that's just WordPress specific.
So lots of amazing tips there, actually. I loved your tip focusing in on keywords that you were ranking for, but you didn't actually include within the article there. And that could be a quick win. Yeah, similar quick win to perhaps building additional internal links to that piece as well. So great piece of advice there as well. So what similarities in general are you noticing at the moment between articles that are performing well and pages on your site that aren't performing so well for Google?
It just seems to be like the frequency of keywords always helps, but exactly that. It's internal links that I've actually seen that have made the most difference when I've been running this exercise and just making sure that the keywords are going from this content to the main money pages with the appropriate anchor text. I think that's something that's often missed, and it's something that I've been working on with my clients and making sure there's no generic anchor text, with click here and all that sort of stuff, and updating that to be these target keywords that we've seen can be improved a little bit, and using that as the anchor text to drive to the money pages, as long as obviously it's in a natural way and makes sense. And obviously we want to avoid anything that's even slightly spammy, but if it doesn't make sense to do it, then I'm not going to add the internal links or make any changes. I'll always look objectively and make sure that it is actually going to be helpful for the users.
And you're also a form of creating long form content. So how long is long form?
I try to stay away from word count. It's not something that I think about really when I'm either writing the content myself or working with copywriters to do that, what I try and do to approach it is what's going to answer the query in the best way. If it's a simple question, like how many legs does a horse have is a common one that I see going around at the minute, then I don't need 1,000 words to say that the answer is 4 legs, or whatever the question is. So I'll look at other pieces of content that are ranking and see how well they're answering the content, or how not well they're answering the content, if that is the case, and look how we can do that better and provide that added value. But I don't always look to be like, okay, so to rank number 1 on this, we need 2,000 words, because that's not what's actually going to be helpful to the user and to our target audience. If actually, just writing 500 words on the piece of content that succinctly answers the question and actually provides value and gives our target audience what they're looking for, then that's completely fine.
Now, something else that I've heard you saying is the importance of delivering in-depth answers. So obviously that could be a very simple one-word answer almost, but are you just providing in-depth answers thinking about the users in mind, or do you ever think about search engines in mind when you're writing?
I do and I don't. I try not to fall into the trap of creating SEO content just for the sake of SEO content, just because Google's not my target audience. Obviously, Google is the tool that we're using, and the same with other search engines to be able to get out there and to reach them people. But I've had more success in thinking about the users and just writing for them. And I think that that's the way, hopefully, much more people and more of the copywriters that I'm working with are also approaching it.
Yeah, that tells a story in itself. You saying I've had more success in thinking about the users, i.e. I guess that means higher rankings and more traffic.
Yeah, exactly that. And again, going back to what we were saying with like the internal links and stuff, and having these detailed answers that get straight to the point, if that's what the query deserves, we can then use the internal links again to drive that traffic and that attention towards our money pages, or towards our call to actions, or whatever it is that the business is, whether it's service based or e-commerce focused, whatever. But yeah, that's the way we try and approach it.
So we've been talking about in-depth answers. What about the questions? How do you go about selecting which questions to answer?
I do it a few different ways. So we'll do like initial keyword research, especially if it's like a new client, and that'll give us like all of the broad terms that people are looking for. But what I've actually started doing more recently, and it's something that I'm definitely going to be rolling out more throughout 2023 and beyond, is I look at Reddit as well, and looking at sites like Quora, but actually using the internal search features of these websites, as well as the reviews that people are actually leaving for these businesses that I'm working on, whether that's reviews on like Trustpilot or Google My Business, whatever the case may be, and actually looking at the language that they're using in their reviews, because that can inform the questions that we then answer in the language that we use in them, rather than using like internal jargon, the terms that the business uses to refer to their products. Perhaps that's not quite the same language that the audience is using. So I look at all of this information, and that informs the language that we use and the questions that we answer. There's an example of that I had with a client of mine that does like plastic containers and packaging and all that sorts of things. And they sell their lids separately. And what they call them internally are closures. And that's what the manufacturer calls them as well, is closures. But actually the customer calls them lids. They want plastic bottle lids. So that's what they search for. So that's what we did, and we were able to restructure the site and change the way that the language is used throughout the site to reflect that. And very quickly after the content was indexed, was re-indexed, were we able to see the change that made in traffic and the increase in conversions again that they had as a result. So just using the data that's already available. And I think that's something that not everyone looks at. They don't think to look at internal search results that way. With that example, people were searching lids in their Magento search features on there, and that's how we found that. So we were able to position the content in that way as a result.
Yeah, I love it. Internal search can can be a gold mine.
Yeah.
But of course, a lot of websites don't necessarily have that or have access to that. And your suggestions of Reddit and Quora are superb as well. I think that those are great places to check out. What about people also ask on Google? Is that something that you check out as well?
Yeah, definitely. I use that as well for informing header choices on content. So yeah, we can look for ideas on Reddit and Quora and like the business reviews, as I mentioned. But yeah, just searching as well for that topic on Google, look at the people also ask. And yeah, I do tend to pick those out as the headings, and then we'll, of course, answer that question in the various headings and then mark it up with the relevant schema if that makes sense to do so as well.
Is it a better use of your time to answer new questions and create new content, or update answers to questions that already exist on your site?
Is it a better use of time? I would look at the detail that's been answered in those existing questions. Is it just like a quick yes or no that's been answered there, but the competitors have actually gone more in depth with the existing answers? If that's the case and the client hasn't really gone into detail, but the competitors have, then that is something that I would look at, because I wouldn't want to perhaps increase the likelihood that users are getting the answers that they're looking for on the competitor sites. So I would look at that first. But if they are actually quite well answered on the sites already, then yeah, I would look for new questions and look at ways that we can solve problems for the clients that other people aren't. So I'd do both in essence, but I'd see what's been done and what poses the biggest opportunity.
So you've shared what SEO should be doing in 2023, so now let's talk about what SEO shouldn't be doing. So what's something that's seductive in terms of time, but ultimately counterproductive, something that SEO shouldn't be doing in 2023?
Yeah, I think for this one, it's the over-reliance on AI-generated content. Don't get me wrong, like, I use tools like this myself. I certainly have in the past, and I don't think that's going to change for like short form, like quick answers, or I'll use it to get me started on a question if I need to for like my own niche websites, and then I'll write it manually myself. But I think there's other websites that have had an over-reliance on this AI-generated content and just been guilty of almost creating content for content's sake rather than thinking strategically about this, how it ties into the overall strategy, and again comes back to the question of providing value to customers and users. I do think that's always been the case, that AI hasn't answered questions fully, but I think that became more true when Google rolled out the helpful content update. It's interesting to see how that impacted content, but I think ultimately don't rely on it would be my tip on that, and don't create content for content's sake. As I said, just focus on providing value that's genuinely useful, solves problems, and that will be the best way to continue to have success. Like I said, AI content does have its place, but yeah, just using it sparingly and in moderation.
Nikki Halliwell is a tech SEO consultant, and you can find her over at nikkihalliwell.com. Nikki, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2023.
Thank you very much.
Get your copy of SEO in 2023, the book, over at SEOin2023.com.